නව ඩොමෙක්ස් වැල්ලම් සහ විසබීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. ඩොමෙක්ස්.
Tonight, commemorations and allegations. 13th war victory celebrations muted by economic crisis and security threats by alleged LTTE sleeper cells. Bottom of the barrel. The Prime Minister says he can't use World Bank funds for fuel and explains that even $1 million may be a challenge for the government right now. Justice in action. More arrests reported in the CID's ongoing probe into attacks on peaceful protesters. A shot in the arm. Investment bank JP Morgan gives Sri Lanka's government bonds a buy recommendation, citing possibility of an improved situation. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday, the 18th of May, 2022.
Fair and Lovely Men's wala alut nama dan Glow and Handsome.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Sri Lanka marked the 13th commemoration of the defeat of terrorism achieved by the sacrifice of over 28,000 Triforces personnel after finally overcoming the LTTE organization on the 18th of May 2009. Celebrations this time, however, were muted due to the ongoing economic crisis. Meanwhile, security was heightened around the country today after an Indian media report warned of plans by an LTTE group to attack Sri Lanka.
Years ago today, Sri Lankans celebrated freedom from terrorism that had devastated the country's peace, harmony and humanity for over 3 decades. Prior to the victory, Velupillai Prabhakaran, leader of the LTTE who fought for a separate state in Sri Lanka, turned the entire country into one of violence and bloodshed responsible for the deaths of thousands of innocent civilians. The country's civil war began in 1983 after a deadly ambush was created out on Sri Lankan Army Patrol 44 Bravo outside the town of Tirunelveli in Jaffna that killed 1 officer and 12 soldiers. From this moment onward, for a period of 3 decades, the damage caused by the LTTE is immeasurable. Further, the country also lost many key political figures including former President Ranasinghe Premadasa and parliamentarians Gamini Disanayaka, Lalith Ethulath Mudali, Ranjan Wijeratne and Lakshman Kadiragamar. However, it was during the 4th phase of the Elam War that the turning point came about. Under the guidance of then President Mahinda Rajapaksa, an offensive was launched against the LTTE after the terror outfit closed off key sluice gates at the Mabillaru Reservoir on the 21st of July 2006, cutting water supply to 15,000 villages in government-controlled areas. From that moment on, the Triforces brought the war to an end on the 18th of May 2009, after the death of LTTE leader Velupillai Prabhakaran during attempted capture by the 53rd Division of the Sri Lanka Army. According to the Defence Ministry, 28,708 Triforce personnel, including commissioned officers and other rankers, sacrificed their lives to protect the country from the brutal LTTE and thousands more disabled. Following the war victory, 18th of May was declared as National War Heroes Day, and since then, the island's dead war heroes have been commemorated annually at the National War Memorial in Battaramulla. However, due to the current economic crisis, victory celebrations were almost muted. Further, security was also high in the country following an Indian news report that cited an Indian intelligence source warning of a planned attack by former LTTE operatives today. In this backdrop, the security was seen beefed up in several areas of the country since last week. Meanwhile, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa in his War Heroes message said that we will not disregard policies targeting the safeguarding of the sovereignty and independence of the country despite the unexpected crisis situation. He also said that the war heroes ended the war and brought peace to the country through a humanitarian operation which had no hate, anger or revenge in it, and therefore there will be no room for racism or any other form of extremism in the motherland where peace was established. The head of state went on to say that there is no doubt that various local, foreign groups and individuals are trying to use the economic and political crisis as a pretext to influence national security, which we must defeat it together, which will only then preserve the commitment of the courageous war heroes. Meanwhile, in his message on the National War Heroes Day, former Army Commander Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca explained what he expected for Sri Lanka at the end of the war.
We express our gratitude for all those war heroes and the Sri Lankans who worked relentlessly towards that enormous victory. And the victory achieved at that time paved the way for Sri Lanka to move forward and to ensure that we establish better future for our future generations. And that was the expectation of all of us who sacrificed for the sake of the motherland. Today, unfortunately, we see the country has ended up in a very sad situation, mainly due to the irresponsible behavior of the politicians in this country. We can see the people unitedly has come forward to fight against this corrupt system in the country. I always assure my blessings to them. I pray that this struggle by the people will end up in success.
Also releasing statements today, the former chiefs of the Sri Lanka Air Force and Navy reminded the public of the importance of a collective effort in addressing the current situation, similar what was done during the conflict.
This victory was possible because the three armed forces and everybody concerned worked as one team. I must especially thank the Sri Lanka Air Force for the excellent way in which they performed their duties. With minimum equipment that we had, we performed in an exceptional manner to play a very leading role to wipe out terrorism from this land. At this time, I would like to remember the services of the people who performed their duties exceptionally well, and especially those people who laid down their lives, the pilots, the officers, the other ranks, everybody in the defense of our nation. We remember them with pride and we will never forget the role that they played.
At the outset, I would like to remember with gratitude those who made the supreme sacrifice, our war heroes, those who have been disabled permanently and partially, and the family members of those members today with respect. Also, I would like to mention, we achieved this victory 13 years ago, working as a team. Not only armed forces, but the entire country supported us. Similar challenge we are facing today. It's an economic challenge. I urge the entire population in the country to make a huge commitment to overcome this economic challenge and come out victorious, defeating these difficult times.
In addition, to mark the 13th National War Heroes Day, over 14,000 Triforces personnel, including commissioned officers and other rankers, were promoted to their next ranks today as a measure of gratitude for their service.
Now in Parliament today, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe called for unity across the political divide to formulate a relief program for the worst hit sections of society. Speaking after the Sri Lanka economy received a sum of $160 million from the World Bank today, the Premier explained that sourcing funds for fuel alone will not be sufficient, as a much larger economic crisis has affected the country's informal sector, rendering them unable to earn a daily living. He added that right now the focus of the government's response should be on sourcing funds for a broad relief program.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today called on the House to unite and bring about solutions to the economic crisis or risk sinking with the ship due to divisions. He explained that right now the government must focus on coming up with a relief plan for the general public and sourcing the funds for this purpose.
මේකෙදී ආණ්ඩු පක්ෂය විපක්ෂය කියලා දෙයක් නැහැ. අපි මෙතෙන්ට ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ මිනිස්සුන්ට වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්න. ජනතාවට රජයේ සේවකයන්ට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වුණොත් අපි කතා කරලා ඒ අයට ආධාර මුදල දෙන්න ගියා බලන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෙමෙයි. මං අහන්නේ කවුද අහන්නේ 3 wheeler අය ගැන? ඒ අයට දුවන්න බෑ. මගේ කාර්යාලය ඉස්සරහා තියෙනවා 3 wheeler. අපි ඒව ගැන හිතන්න ටිකක්. ඒ සහනය අපි ලබා දෙන්න ක්‍රමයක් තමයි බලන්නේ. ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම එදිනෙදා තියෙන ආදායම නැහැ. මෙතන හිටගෙන ඉන්නවා, ආණ්ඩුවට බයිනවා, පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට බයිනවා, මොකද්ද මුන් කරන්න කියලා අහනවා. ඕක නැත්ත තත්ත්වේ. ඉතින් අපි මේක කරන්නේ නැත්තම් නිකන් බෙදිලා සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට කරනවා නම් අන්තිමට අපි ඔක්කොම ගිලිනවා. පෙට්‍රල් එව්වා කියලා මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ විසඳෙන්නේ නැහැ. විශාල ආර්ථික ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා. ඒකයි මම කිව්වේ පාර්ලිමේන්තු කමිටි ක්‍රමයේ මාර්ගයෙන් අපි ඔක්කොම එකතු වෙලා ඒ ගැන අපි එනසුමානේ සාකච්ඡා කරමු. අපිට තියෙනවා යම්කිසි කාලයක්. ඒ කාලේ තමයි අපිට අමාරුම කාලෙ වෙන්නේ. එතෙන්ට අපිට මූණ දීලා කොහොමද යන්නේ කියලා මේ සභාවක් හැටියට කවුද උනේ වග කියන්නේ ඔක්කොම හොයලා බලන්න. ඒක කමන්නේ නැහැ. මේකට වග කියන්න ඕන මිනිස්සු හෙව්වා කියලා ඒ වාර්තාව අපිට කන්න බෑ.
Meanwhile, Samagi Janabalawege MP Dr. Harsha De Silva questioned the Premier on the impact of today's hard default and called on him to outline what his plan of action is to be in response.
අපි අද ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම hard default වුණොත් එකපාරට මේ cross default clauses එක කොච්චර අපිට වහාම ගෙවන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවද? ඒ ඩොලර් බිලියන 5ක්ද 10ක්ද 15ක්ද 20ක්ද කීයද? එක දෙක දැන් අපි තාම debt restructuring වැඩේ පටන් ගන්න අපි lawyers ලා පත් කළත් නැහැ. අපි ෆයිනෑන්ෂල් ඇඩ්වයිසර්ස්ලා පත් කළත් නැහැ. දැන් මේක නැති අවස්ථාවේදී අපි අද මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? අපි ඔබතුමාගේ වැඩපිළිවෙල මොකද්ද? අපි ඔබතුමාට මේ කකුලෙන් අදින්න හදන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක තමයි අපි කිව්වේ කමිටු හරහා අපි සම්පූර්ණ සහායක ඔබතුමාට ලබා දෙන්නම් කියලා. ඒකේ කිසි වෙනසක් නැහැ.
එන සතියේ සම්පූර්ණ වාර්තාවක් මම සකස් කරනවා. ඇත්ත කියන්න සමහර ඒවා තොරතුරු නැහැ. නැත්තම් තොරතුරු වැරදි. මම හිතන්නේ මේ සභාවට බලන්න සිදු වෙනවා. කොහොමද මේ තොරතුරු ලැබුවේද? statistics have gone haywire. ඔක්කොම එකතු කරලත් නැහැ. මම දන්නවා මට හරියට මේ මුල කියන්න බෑ. කොහොම වුණත් බිලියන 1ක් වුණත් බිලියන 10 වුණත් ගෙවන්න මිලියනයක්වත් නැහැ. ඕකයි අපිට මූණ දෙන්න තියෙන තත්ත්වය. ඒකයි මම පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ ඉල්ලේ 3 වෙනි සතියේ ඒතකොට විවාදයක් තියන්න අපේ දේශපාලන වැඩසටහනත් වෙනම කියන්නම් මුළු පාර්ලිමේන්තුවම දැනුවත් කරන්න. ඒත් මම කැමති හර්ෂ ඩිසිලා මන්තුමාටත් අනික් අයට උවමනා නම් හෙට නැත්තම් සවුන්දට ඇවිල්ලා ඩොක්ටර් සමරතුංගයි අනික් අය මුණ ගැහිලා ඒ සම්පූර්ණ කරුණු මම විපක්ෂයට ලබලා දෙන්න. You fix a time with them and go along. Okay.
In the meantime, opposition leader Sajid Premadasa urged the Prime Minister to name members to all Parliament oversight committees and pledged to help the government in bringing about beneficial programs targeting the people. In response, the Prime Minister explained that despite the receipt of $160 million from the World Bank today, the government will not be able to use the funds to purchase fuel without express permission.
I made my speech based on facts. Right. And I would like to once again invite the Honourable Prime Minister to take us up on our proposal to provide the 3 economic experts who are in Parliament with the positions that I mentioned. And there's absolutely no issue in working with the government on programs that are beneficial to the people and to the country.
Just to clarify some of the matters, the World Bank money cannot be used for fuel. At the moment they have given us the money which is for cash transfer. There's some more to come. So we want to ask them whether it's possible at this stage to use some of the money urgently to get petrol. Whether it succeed or not, I do not know. There's a World Bank team in Colombo at the moment. I'll also be meeting them today. So we'll pursue it. If you are lucky, we'll have it. Otherwise, we won't have that money. So that's about all that we want to do. Secondly, I'm bringing the proposals on the committees and even at district level. So as to who's going to be chairpersons, the opposition and the government has to decide. I know opposition has to get positions, which not only the SJB, the TNA, JVP, Tamil Congress and the government. So we'll have to sit down and sort out how to do it. Certainly to have Dr. Harsha De Silva working with me is a great pleasure. I mean, he's worked with me earlier. I have no problems at all.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa issued a clarion call to the international community to help Sri Lanka by sending their citizens to enjoy Sri Lanka's pristine nature and holiday in peace. He urged travellers to ignore travel advisories and visit the island as a show of support towards Sri Lanka's recovery from crisis. The opposition leader also urged the Sri Lankan diaspora to invest in Sri Lanka's future.
Let me take this opportunity to appeal to the international community, to induce, to encourage your people to visit Sri Lanka. We are a pristine country with a beautiful environment. We have immense cultural and historical heritage. We have enormous sources of wildlife, nature resources, natural resources, national parks and strict natural reserves. So I encourage everyone in the international community, visit our country. Our country is safe to visit. Ignore the travel warnings. Trust us. We are the opposition in the country. We are inviting the international community to visit our motherland and help us out and also enjoy yourselves. Come to the beaches of the east. Come to the beaches of the south, the north and throughout the country. You can do your surfing. You can do your beach enjoyment activities. You can swim and you can enjoy the sun. So I appeal once again and I encourage the international community to visit our country, to visit our motherland and enjoy the peace and tranquility of our motherland. And also, I want to make a special appeal to the Sri Lankan diaspora. Please come and invest in our country. Please bring your monies to our country. Please come and have your citizenship in our country. If you prefer to live there, have your second home in our country. Visit us, invest, support us, and ensure a good return on your investment. We are living in dark times, no doubt, but please understand, we will overcome. We will be victorious as a country. So I encourage everyone in the Sri Lankan diaspora, come to our motherland, invest in our motherland, invest in our businesses, invest in our infrastructure, invest in renewable energy, invest in our road system, invest in our education, invest in our health. So that is my message to them.
More arrests as probe ongoing into peaceful protesters. Details after this break.
Big 3.
Welcome back. Several more suspects implicated in the attacks on peaceful protesters on the 9th of May at Temple Trees and Golface Green were arrested today by the Criminal Investigation Department. They include Moratuwa Mayor Samanlal Fernando and 2 SLPP local government members as well as Nawasinghale National Organisation head Dan Priyasad. Further, SLPP MPs Sanath Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka were remanded until the 25th of this month by the Fort Magistrate today when they were produced after he rejected their bail applications.
Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna MPs Sanath Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka were arrested by the CID last afternoon in connection with the attack on protesters at the Golface and Temple Trees protest sites. After their arrests, the 2 MPs had recorded statements until around 3 in the morning for more than 8 hours. Meanwhile, former Western Provincial Councillor Amal Silva and an employee of the Deval Mount Lavinia Municipal Council who were remanded till today were also produced in court. Further, parliamentarians Sanath Nishantha and Milan Jayatilaka were also produced before the Fort Magistrates Court today. Presenting facts today, Deputy Solicitor General Riaz Bari explained that eyewitness evidence has recorded proving that the 2 MPs were actively involved in inciting violence. Addressing court, he said that an eyewitness identified as Lairavira Sekara and 2 others had testified that Sanath Nishantha, the 4th suspect in the case, had been seen urging the SLPP supporters to assault and kill the peaceful protesters. President's Counsel U.R. Vijayawardena, who appeared for MP Sanath Nishantha, then presented a bail application on behalf of his client, arguing that his client did not in any way make any speeches inciting his supporters to violence. He explained further that he had instead gone to the Gotagogama village location to try and prevent the violence. The President's Counsel added that there were photographs and video footage of his client speaking to a police officer where he had asked the police officer to stop the violence. Meanwhile, President's Counsel Razik Farooq, who appeared for MP Milan Jayatilaka, also argued that his client had been at the location to help avoid a confrontation. However, after considering the facts presented, Fort Magistrate Tilana Gamage rejected the suspect's bail application and remanded them until the 25th of May. Meanwhile, a statement was recorded from Senior DIG in charge of the Western Province, Deshabandhu Tennakun, who was summoned to the CID last evening until 12:15 this morning. According to the police, the recording of his statement had gone on for more than 8 hours. Meanwhile, Moratuwa Mayor Samanlal Fernando, Sitawakapura Pradesh Sabha Chairman Jayanta Rohana and SLPP supporter Samira Chaturanga and Kalaniya Pradesh Sabha member Manjula Prasanna were also arrested by the CID today. In addition, Nawasinghale National Organisation head Dan Priyasad was also arrested after surrendering to the CID. The suspects are due to be produced in court tomorrow.
Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara continues to urge the public not to queue up outside refuelling stations tomorrow as well, since there won't be any petrol available as existing stocks will only be supplied for essential services. In the meantime, Litro Gas informed the public that 80,000 cylinders will be distributed to the market daily from tomorrow.
Litro Gas Lanka Limited's plan to release 80,000 cylinders to the market from today hit a major snag as the company was unable to unload the 2,800 metric ton shipment last night due to bad weather conditions. As a result, the LPG tanker was unloaded this afternoon at the Colombo port and the gas was transported by truck to the Litro terminal. What the company says is that they will be able to release the 80,000 gas cylinders to the market daily starting from tomorrow. Until then, the company has urged the public not to queue outside Litrogas outlets during the day. Despite the company's calls, the public continued to ignore their pleas and queue up demanding gas. Meanwhile, a protest also worked off, blocking the Colombo-Demodogoro road by people demanding gas. Meanwhile, the country's fuel situation seems to have no signs of improving. Large queues continued for both petrol and diesel near refueling stations. Previously, it was diesel that was in shortage, but now the shortage has affected petrol as well. With that being the case, Minister of Energy Kanchana Wijesekara pleaded with the public not to pile up for petrol during the day unless absolutely necessary.
විශේෂයෙන්ම අද වන විට අපිට ප්‍රමාණවත් ඩීසල් තොග ලැබිලා තිබෙනවා. ඊයේ දවස වන විට අපි දිවයින පුරා සියලුම ඉන්ධන පිරවුම්හල් වලට ඩීසල්, සුපර් ඩීසල් සහ ඔටෝ ඩීසල් කියන දෙකම අපි බෙදා හැරීමේ කටයුතු වල යෙදලා ඉන්නවා. අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා අද හවස වෙනකට අපේ රටේ තිබෙන සියලුම ඉන්ධන පිරවුම්හල් වලට ඒ 1190ටම අවශ්‍ය ඔටෝ ඩීසල් සහ සුපර් ඩීසල් කියන එක අකණ්ඩව ලබා දෙන්න. ඒ කියන්නේ අද දවස් විතරක් ලබා දීලා නවත්තන්න විතරක් නෙවෙයි ඉදිරි සති කිහිපය සඳහාත් අකණ්ඩව ඩීසල් ලබා දීමේ කටයුතු අපි කරන්න අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. නමුත් පෙට්‍රල් පිළිබඳව අපිට ගැටලුවක් තිබෙනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම ඊයේ පෙරේදා දවසේ අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමා කරපු කතාවෙත් කිව්වා පෙට්‍රල් තිබෙන්නේ එක දවසකට පමණයි කියලා. පෙට්‍රල් සඳහා පෝලිම් වල රැඳිලා ඉන්න එපා. මොකද අද දවසෙත් හෙට දවසෙත් කියන දවස් දෙක අපිට මේ බෙදා හැරීම කටයුතු කරන්නින් තාමත්ම සීමිත තිබෙන තොගත් එක්ක. ඒතරේ තියෙන සීමිත තොග අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවා සපයන විශේෂයෙන්ම ගිලන් රථවලට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවා කරන අනෙකුත් ආයතන වලට ඒ කටයුතු වල බෙදා හැරීම සඳහා විවිධ ඉන්ධන පිරවුම් වලට පමණයි අපිට ලබා දීමේ කටයුතු කරන්න සිදුන. අපි කනගාටු පළ කරනවා. ඒ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා සිකුරාදා දවසේ ඉඳලා දවස් 3ක්වත් යනවා අඩුම තරමේ මේ පෙට්‍රල් කියන එකත් මේ සමස්ත ඉන්ධන පිරවුම් වලට බෙදලා ඉවර කරන්න. ඒතර දවස් 3ක් විතර යනවා. ඒ නිසා සෙනසුරාදා ඉරිදා වගේ වෙනකට තමයි අපිට පෙට්‍රල් ඩීසල් කියන දෙක සමස්ත වශයෙන් දෙන්න පුළුවන් නිසා ඒක නිසා තොග එකතු කරන්න එපා.
In the meantime, the Speaker has requested the IGP to provide fuel for the vehicles of the parliamentarians from the refueling station belonging to the Police Transport Division in Narayanpeta. It was also reported that the Minister of Energy has informed that the required fuel will be provided to the filling station by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation. Accordingly, a letter has been issued by the IGP's office to the Senior DIG of Assistance Services yesterday, requesting fuel to be issued to the vehicles of the Members of Parliament at the police fuel station. The letter states that the Member of Parliament should be in the vehicle at the time of obtaining fuel and that fuel should be issued on cash basis only.
Anti-government protesters near the Golface Green have now reached their 40th day and seem to show no sign of dying down. Further, a protest was also worked off today, demanding the arrest of all suspects involved in assaulting peaceful protesters in Colombo on the 9th of May.
The anti-government protest at Golface Green, calling the president and the government to resign, was held today for its 40th consecutive day. With the National War Heroes celebration falling today, special programs worked off during the day to commemorate Triforce personnel and civilians who lost their lives in the Civil War. Meanwhile, the anti-government demonstrations near temple trees were also held during the day. Further, as a part of the ongoing investigations pertaining to the brutal assaults by the SLPP supporters on the 9th of May, officials of the Criminal Investigation Department were seen carrying out their probes. 2 protesters were seen being taken to the CID for further investigations. In the meantime, another demonstration condemning the May 9 assault was held near the Fort Railway Station today. Further, the protesters called for the immediate arrests of all suspects involved in these assaults.
Taking you to business news now, US investment bank JP Morgan has backed Sri Lanka's crisis-hit government bonds today, saying that recent political changes in the country should gradually improve its strains and help in talks with the International Monetary Fund. adding an overnight tag to the Sri Lankan bonds, which is effectively a buy recommendation. JP Morgan analysts said that political stability should have the way or pave the way for bonds to move higher from near all-time lows. It added that Sri Lanka is officially now in default as a so-called grace period to make some already overdue bond interest payments expired today. JP Morgan also stated that it thinks that the stability should result in both IMF discussions and the process of appointing legal and financial advisors moving forward. The Business Confidence Index for the month of April shows a significant drop in confidence in the country's economic situation, with 87% of respondents expecting the national economy to worsen further. Meanwhile, in terms of the country's investment climate, last month's majority of 92% of business people who deemed it to be poor or very poor has now grown to 97%.
The April LMD Nielsen IQ Business Confidence Index says that corporates continue to view Sri Lanka's economy in an extremely pessimistic light. On the economy, the poll shows that a massive majority of 87% of respondents expect the national economy to worsen further, which is 2 percentage points higher than in the previous month. In comparison, the level of economic pessimism stood at 55% 6 months ago. As for survey participants who expressed optimism, this was recorded at a mere 3%, with them saying that the economy will improve in the coming 12 months, while 10% believe it will stay the same during this time. In terms of sales volumes for whatever is left of business prospects, expectations continue to be muted, and to this end, 62% from roughly 2/3 of respondents a month ago expect their sales volumes to get better in the 12 months ahead. This compares unfavorably with what corporate executives said in December, when 86% of business people who spoke to the pollsters expected their sales volumes to improve. In the 2 preceding months, however, there was some good news in the latest report on how businesses have performed since this time last year, with nearly 6 in 10 survey respondents revealing that their sales volumes have increased compared to a year ago. In contrast, only 36% said so in January. In terms of the investment climate, more bad news shows in that last month's eye-opening majority of 92% of business people who deem it to be poor or very poor has now grown to 97%. Further, whereas 8% of the survey sample perceived the investment climate as being good or fair in March, the count a month later has plummeted to a mere 3%.
Taking a look at the Colombo Stock Exchange, indices ended in the red today as the all-share price index fell by 40.44 points to end at 8,417.21. Meanwhile, the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 2,795.53, following a loss of 14.28 points. Share volumes were, in the meantime, recorded at 268 million, while market turnover was high compared to yesterday's 3.4 billion rupees. The transportation sector was highest contributor to today's turnover, while the food and beverage sector was the second highest. In addition, foreign purchases amounted to 58 million rupees, while foreign sales were 49 million rupees. Foreign participation in the market and the market activity remained at subdued levels, besides and despite closing as net buyers. We'll return with your international news after this break. The United States is recruiting members of international terrorist organizations and religious extremists as mercenaries to Ukraine to engage in sabotage operations against Russian troops. This was stated by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Russia, accusing the United States. The news was posted on the website of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service yesterday. It claims that in April 2022, about 60 members of an extremist group were released from a prison in a Kurdish-controlled area of Syria with the involvement of US intelligence and that they were sent to a US military base in Syria for military training before being sent to Ukraine. The SVR said the US base in Syria and its surroundings had become a center of terrorist activity, with as many as 500 members of extremist groups and other fighters being trained there. The Russian SVR added that the training courses conducted by these extremist organization members and other armed personnel at the US military base mainly include the use of anti-tank missiles, drones and various means of communication and observation. Their mission, it adds, was to carry out sabotage operations against Russian troops in Syria and Ukraine. That wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching.